Okay, 1 minute. I'll present. Firstly, before I'm starting the presentation, I kindly ask you to pray for my country. Nowadays, we live really a hard days. Too many Palestinians were killed by Israeli occupation, so thank you. Hello, everybody. This is Ela Abdulkadir. I am from Sabahattin Zaim University. Today, I'm going to talk about the title of the impact of COVID-19 on NGOs, human resource performance. Actually, why I chose to non-profit organization or NGOs? Actually, because this is what I'm working now on, and 4 years ago I'm starting to work in NGOs, so it's really interesting, and I know the environment of the NGO, how volunteers deal with each other, how top management must deal with the volunteers and communicate with them. So let me, in terms of the abstract, since the Scout movement plays an important role in communities and contributes to the development of young people in many ways, it's necessary to preserve a productive team to keep the Scout organization to the right way. Due to the lack of researchers that carried out in this field, this paper studies the best ways to increase the performance of volunteers in NGOs, especially for Scout organization during this pandemic. And this is actually a descriptive research. It was a cross-sectional design, and the data was collected quantitative and qualitative methods. And there was conducted 7 online meetings with 7 top managers in different Scout organizations, analyzed with 154 questionnaire responses from volunteers. The results prove the research hypothesis of the positive relationship between Macklin's human motivation theory, which is the needs of achievement, affiliation, and power. So, and its impact on the high performance of volunteers during this pandemic. Besides training, development, enhancing skills, and communication are the best ways to motivate volunteers in the team, as concluded. And by the term of introduction, briefly, let me say to you what's my motivation of this study, why I choose this. Because, you know, the NGOs actually, no one can deny that NGOs are an important role in the societies because of different kinds of gaps that cover in communities. And by speaking about the scouting, what is scouting? Since scouting is a complementary to school training and give the information to boys and girls actually in creative ways. And its objective to encourage the physical, intellectual, social, emotional, and spiritual development of young people, so they can take a constructive place actually in society as responsible citizens. And this paper actually examines the problem of dropout of the volunteers from NGOs during the COVID-19, and it presents a new approach of how top management can preserve an active and productive volunteers by applying Macklin's human motivation theory. Lockdown, actually, you know, now we live in a lockdown caused a kind of depression actually on the top management of NGOs, especially for Scout leaders that used to meet in different adventures, discover new places, and new sudden cuts out of activities with the Scouts. However, this paper, as I said, it presents these challenges and give the right way how to deal with that. And by taking about research methodology here, by speaking about research technique and objective, this paper is a type of descriptive research, as I said, where it describes the situation of NGOs and Scout organizations during the COVID, and how this research focuses on the characteristics of successful management during the pandemic. It analyzes the relationship between variables like demographic information and its relation with motivation needs in order to solve and conclude the best solutions for this problem. The research design here, as I say, this is a cross-sectional data. And by speaking about the research questions, what is my research question here was, does NGO affect positively on volunteers' personal life during COVID-19 pandemic? The second question is, does NGO provide the appropriate training and development for volunteers during COVID-19 pandemic? The third was, what are the important factors of volunteers' motivation in NGOs during the COVID? And what are the factors that must NGOs add to increase the volunteers' productivity during the COVID-19 pandemic. And by speaking about research questions, here is the hypothesis: increasing volunteers' loyalty leads to an increase the productivity in NGOs during the COVID. And number two, delegation plays a crucial role for rising volunteers' performance during the COVID-19. Also, the third one, skills development is an important factor of volunteers' motivation during the COVID-19. And by speaking about the method, actually there was two stages by collecting the data. There was a qualitative data and the quantitative data. The first stage is qualitative. As I said, there was conducted 7 online meetings with 7 top managers. We collect some data from qualitative data, and the quantitative was self-questionnaire, a survey. There was responses by 154. That analysis, qualitative analysis by content analysis technique, it was analyzed. In the quantitative analysis by tables, graphic, statistical charts, as I will show now. And let's speak about the findings and results. As we say, there was 2 stages. The first stage, qualitative results. Actually, there was 35 minutes for each, let's say, for each online meeting and with the managers. There was structured questions like, does your NGO work during the COVID-19 pandemic? How do you motivate your team during this pandemic? And the last question is, what about the number of your members of the organization? As you can see now, the qualitative results was, as I said, 7 organizations with 7 top managers. The motivation approach was, some of them says we use, for example, the online promotion system. We use volunteering certificates to promote personal volunteer projects. We use free training for them. We just give them the scholarships to study in university, securing jobs for volunteers in their career journey. And some of them says we make a high recognition, online recognition. And some of them says training and development. Some of them says online workshops. Actually, let me here just have a spotlight on an important thing to the NGOs, even to all the companies that how can they increase actually the motivation of their employees or their volunteers by actually increasing the awareness of organization's vision. Actually, what's my vision of organization? In order to plant, let's say, some deep thing, some deep motivation in the employees or volunteers in order to be productive and high performance. Of course, the team members, some of them is different. Some of them have such 5 volunteers. Some of them have 15. Some of them have 160 volunteers in their organization. And it's really a good number of that. And how the responsibility of the retention of the volunteers. And some of them have 20, 60, as you say, 20 and 10 people in their organization. Let's speak now on the quantitative results. Quantitative results, as I said, it was 154 responses from 10 countries. Demographic findings, we have the average age was 29, so it's all the youth of the people. We have 10 countries contributed to the survey. Jordan is the highest, 73% female, 81% male. I used actually 9 questions of or 9 levels of Likert scale. 3 results related to affiliation needs, 3 results related to the power of needs, and 3 findings related to the achievement needs. And lastly, we asked the volunteers in the questionnaire some open-ended questions to know more about the motivation and how can we cover the gap that. By speaking about the quantitative findings here, as you see now in the screen, we have a table of strongly agree, undecided, disagree, strongly disagree about some questions we asked them. As say the blue here color is about to the achievements. There was 3 Likert scales about the achievement thing about to ask them. So we ask them something about the training. What's the degree of organization provide training, learning, put you in a competition, really competition challenges for volunteers. And there was, as you see, for example, it's 27%. I'm not now talking about the percentage. You can see from because we have a little time for that. And some of them we ask them about the affiliation. Does your organization positively affect your life? Does it give you the really needed affiliation that you need during the COVID-19? Does your organization just communicate well with you online or whatever during this COVID-19? And actually, as you see, the results were differentiated about that. And lastly, about the power, ask them 3 large scale about the power. Actually, about, for example, does your NGO really, for example, value the volunteers' opinion? Does you delegate you? Does the NGO give you a critical task really on the NGO or non-profit organization? And lastly, in the right side of the screen, you can see the factors of volunteers' motivation, NGOs. As I said, that there was open-ended questions about that. Some of them says actually really interesting answers. For example, some of them say leadership participation, career development, community service, serenity, lead for learning, self-responsibility. And there are a lot actually of that due to the lack of time. For example, building new generation, self-responsibility, as I say, impact on individuals. This is actually really a motivation for the volunteers to keep them. Lastly, discussion, as I said, that the results above show that McClelland's theory of needs affects directly on volunteers' motivation during the COVID-19. Training and development is a important factor to increase the performance of volunteers and NGOs during the pandemic. And lastly, the conclusion here actually to conclude, motivation of volunteers is one of the most important tools to get a successful nonprofit organization, especially at Scout organization, which have a big impact on society. Although the pandemic made the mission harder, but it's not impossible. So let's state for that reason, top management of NGOs should take in consideration McClelland's social needs theory and apply effective online engagement system according to the characteristics of volunteers in the team. And this is actually some of the references. There are a lot of them, because of the lack of time, I'm not going to speak about that. And lastly, thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. We have already a question from Bushra. Is in chat, please. Can you question from the chat?
Yes, 1 minute. I'm returning on this. Okay, if you have guys any question, I can read.
I want to
yes.
Here.
Yes, for sure.
And motivate people by developing their vision. How do you think they can develop their vision more? What should they do in order to develop their vision?
Actually, yes, thank you, Bushra, for your questions. I said that the top management must increase the awareness of the NGOs' vision. For example, some volunteers are working in your organization and they don't know what's the vision of your the vision of your NGO or the vision of your organization. So it's really important to give them some lectures, some awareness about what we have a responsibility in this society and how can cover the gap in the society. I hope it's understood.
Thank you for your answer and thank you for your presentation. I think it was very interesting one.
Thank you so
and I want to let you know that we all pray for Palestine.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Any question more due to the NGOs or how we can motivate volunteers? I welcome any question.
We have from Rufuna.
Yes, please.
Thank you very much for your presentation. On the main findings, you highlighted that the volunteers' needs for satisfaction is mainly affected by a volunteer's personalities. So to what extent do you think that NPOs or NGOs, when they take those volunteers, how should they consider, or how should they test the personalities if they are in line with what they do, or do you think it's not important?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's really a good question. Thank you so much. Let's say about the characteristic of volunteers. As a top manager, I should know what my characteristics, what the volunteers' characteristic of my organization. By even it's online, we can conduct an online meeting with them. We can communicate. We can do, for example, a form. They can just fill the form in order to ask them some questions, how they feel about something. What's the important thing for them? For example, some of them need to be loved. Just I'm being liked from others. This is a good thing. Some of them need no, please don't love me, don't like me. I just want some important role. I just want some important responsibility that I can take. Some of them need the power. Some of them need to be in a high position in order to be productive. So it's really, there are a lot of questions that you can ask them in order to analyze the characteristic of volunteers and in order to satisfy their needs. Thank you. Any just more questions? Thanks, Ela, for the presentation. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, Ela. I have only a recommendation because I'm inspired by the theater festival in our country, is the city Sibiu. And I will send to you the concept of this festival, which engage a huge people from all over the world. Is a festival that create for each kind of person something particular, and it's not possible to not be passionate and to not have a role in this festival. If you saw the concept, maybe you will have some ideas to put in your non-governmental organization. It's good to see what is happening in good best practices, you know. So I will send to you specially, and also I put in CC Professor Nicoleta. Thank you so much for your passion. I saw passion in your presentation, and this is a very important ingredient for an NGO organization. Thank you so much. If another professor